So, Jim, I sat down with Craig, and he's been overcropping for years, and we haven't said anything because we needed the fruit. And the fruit, in all fairness, has been good for our program. And last time I sat down with him, he talked about having some language, perhaps by his attorney, put in our contract. And the way that I look at our business is, the wineries write the contract for the wineries, and I don't know that I want grower input in a contract. I did offer him what you and I talked about, or I told you I was going to offer him 5 years at $2,000 a ton for 100 tons of Pinot. And what I'm thinking about doing there is what I would like is just for him to deliver the grapes. I pay him $2,000, and then, if he's farming it right, some of those grapes are going to make our reserve program, and then I don't know, I'll pay him a bonus or something. I don't know. What I'd like is the flexibility of taking that fruit or a portion of that fruit and putting in the upper program. The viticulture language, I don't have too much of a problem with it as long as it doesn't change the flavor of the contract. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, you touched on a lot of issues there, so let's try to drill down a little more into just how this thing might look. You said one thing that caught my ear, and that was a reference to a bonus. So is that a bonus that you would pay sometime later when you decided what grapes are going to go into your reserve label?
Yeah, I mean, if it makes it, you ought to get something out of it.
I like the idea because it's a big deal with me to try to participate with the growers and give the grower an upside in a long-term relationship, and that's what you're talking about. But what you just mentioned in terms of paying a bonus in the future does raise a legal problem that I want you to know about, and that's a violation of the Berryhill Act.
What?
You rely on the Grape Crush Report, don't you?
Yeah.
For information?
I look at it.
So the Clare Berryhill Grape Crush Report Act is the act that sets up that entire system of reporting by wineries the prices paid for grapes. So you have to report the prices that you paid for grapes, and those prices have to be determined by January 10th of the year following the harvest.
Well, I'm paying him $2,000.
Right, but your ultimate price that you're paying for the grapes is not going to be determined until you decide what grapes are going into your reserve program and you pay him the bonus. So that's the total price that you're paying for those grapes, and that's not determined until a year later or whenever you're doing it, and that's a violation of the Act. So we don't want to have a provision like that in your contract, because if you do, according to the Berryhill Act, the contract then is unenforceable. That can hurt you, and it can hurt the grower.
Yeah.
So that's something to remember. So what I would like to see you do, I like the idea of focusing on your reserve label and focusing on the Devil's Food Cake second label. I'd like to see you move this negotiation into a direction where you are identifying grapes perhaps by block for your reserve label, and then the rest is going to go into the Devil's Food label. And if you do that, I'd like to see you negotiate viticultural practices for the reserve label. Less so for the Devil's Food Cake, because you don't really need that. And I think I would like to see you have the contract provide for communication between the grower and the winery, and meeting, at the beginning of the year, deciding upon viticultural practices on an annual basis and making that part of your contract. Yeah. But in exchange for what he's going to be doing, probably reducing yields, he's going to be concerned about how much money he's getting. I would think you need to be prepared to pay more for those grapes. Maybe higher price per ton. In the long term, you can look at bottle pricing so that he has a stake in the future.
Bottle pricing?
Sure. On your reserve label.
Yeah.
And you may even want to offer him a vineyard designation program so that he has some return.
Jeez, I should just give him my firstborn while I'm at it too.
Yeah, well, maybe. I think that's the new world.
All right.
You might want to offer some other things to him. Just think about this.
Are you working for him or are you working for me?
I'm working for you in the long run because I want this to be successful for you.
All right.
And that is offer him, think about how much time you need to pay for those grapes. And can you, because he has problems with his lender, if you're getting into a better position, can you pay for those grapes, by the end of the year, for instance, rather than stretching out?
Yeah.
and maybe offer him a security interest, a UCC lien, in, to secure payment of those grapes. That might be attractive to him because grower's lien is difficult to enforce. I think his lawyer will tell him that.
Okay.
But just make sure your lender is okay with granting that UCC lien in your, in your grapes.
Okay. I'll do that.
So there's some feedback for structuring this negotiation, so I'll leave it to you now. Good luck.
Okay.
So, Brian, we last left, and you had an offer on the table. We really didn't talk too much about the offer. I had some concerns still to be addressed in regards to viticulture practices. Again, my attorney thinks it's a good idea that we define some specific practices that you're going to be looking for to be done, so that when I follow those practices and do what is asked, that we're not back at the table having an argument in the future. The one thing that my attorney mentioned to me is that we should meet more often, actually, in the vineyard, so we can see exactly what it is that you're asking. You do what you're asking. You show me what you're asking for, and we sit there and we negotiate that out at that point in time. What's going to work for both parties? So I just wanted to get your feedback on what you had heard back from your attorney as well.
Well, yeah, I heard a lot from him, and the essence of this is we've been doing business a long time, and we get along real well. So, the viticulture practice, I think that certainly what we'd like to do is we'd like to offer, a standard contract. You can read it over with your attorney, and any feedback that you have, we would certainly consider, strongly consider. The other thing is I thought about it, and might not be a bad idea in our offer to you. I threw out a bonus. Perhaps we could designate a block or two to put into the reserve program. The reserve program is it's out of the hospital, but it's still limping along. So I need some flexibility on there. Maybe we could start that next year in 2012. Perhaps this year I could take all the Pinot. We could pay $2,000 and then start initiating some blocks in 2012 to put into our reserve program.
Those things sound good, and I understand that your reserve program still isn't hitting it out of the park like you're expecting and hopeful it will be in the future. So I can work with that. I do want to now get back to a little bit of the contract talk that we were referring to, and you had mentioned 5 years with the 2-year evergreen. That's an awfully long time to be tied up at $2,000 a ton. So I wanted to come back to you with maybe a little bit different scenario. And let's talk about maybe, a 3-year contract with a 1-year evergreen, at $2,150 minimum, and using previous 2 years grape crush reports to see what those averages are and that percent change, and we cap that percent change at 7% plus or minus either way, and I wanted to get your feedback on that. I mean that gives room for growth on my end. It gives room for the downturns on your end, and I don't know if you've ever done contracts like that before, but that's something that from talking with different people, I'm interested in something like that. It gives me, some potential growth opportunity as well. So I wanted to talk to you about that.
No, I haven't done any contracts that have a percentage change. How does that work?
Well, so what we can do is we can use some real simple numbers. We've got. Let's just say the price in 2009 was $2,000 a ton, and in 2010 the price was $2,200 a ton. We know that's not what it was because I only got paid $1,800. But let's say it's $2,200. That's a 10% increase. So instead of getting that 10% increase, I'd get 7%. So my new price going forward, if we started at $2,000, would be $2,140 a ton. So it gives me room for ups, and and the opposite. If the price went down to $1,800 a ton, it would have a 10% loss. Again, it would be capped at 7%, so my price would be $1,860 a ton. So does that sound like something that you might have some interest in?
Well, that sounds like where I need the grapes for 5 years. I mean, I really do. Our program the projections of our program, both of them are showing dramatic growth or projected to grow dramatically. So we need those 100 tons. We want to get it from you. I would be open to something like that, maybe not at a 7% cap, maybe at a 5% cap. I mean, I've got to think about this, but doing it in my head, I think that would work. I would need 5 years, and maybe we could work something out where we pay a different price for the grapes in the block that goes into the reserve program.
Okay, I hear you on the 5 years. So that's still we can continue to determine that. Then the next question that arises to me is about this fruit for the reserve program, and I can't be expected to do more work in the field for the same price and grow at lower tonnage for the same price. So we need to come up with a price there. Have you, on that particular acreage, have you thought about maybe an acreage, price where you just pay me so much per acre to farm, maybe $9,000 an acre to farm this Pinot Noir for you at 3 ton to the acre, if that's what you're looking for? Is that something you've thought about?
No, I haven't thought about that. But I would be willing to, and I've put this on paper, so I know I'd be willing to, on the blocks that we designate for working together, we designate for the reserve program, I'd be willing to offer you $3,000 a ton on those. So, the per acre thing I want to stay away with. I don't want a lot of risk on the winery. We're just recovering from this, but I will pay you. I probably would be able to pay you $3,000 on the tons on the blocks that we agreed would be going into the reserve program.
Okay, I just wanted to bring it up. My bank brought that up to me, and they wanted to know if that was something that we had thought about. That way, all the risk isn't on the grower every year. So we just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, just a minute. I'm getting a call from my attorney.
Okay.
Let me.
Hey, how's it going? I just wanted to know how it was going.
Oh, I thought it was going pretty good until you called me. So, what do you want?
So where are you in the negotiation?
Well, I had him until you called.
Sorry.
I
was just a little slow, so I wanted to get some billable time.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is he wanted a 3-year deal. I can't do that. He wanted to raise the price a little bit, stagger the price a little bit. It's hard for me to do that. But what I said I would do is I would pay him a price, and then for the lower program, and then designate the blocks like you instructed me to do. Perhaps pay a higher price for the blocks that were going into the reserve program, and I just threw out $3,000.
One thing I didn't tell you was that I think it's a really good idea to bring to the grower some sort of indexing of the price, to build some flexibility in the pricing over the long term, up and down. Have you thought about that at all?
Well, give me an example.
Well, you can refer back to the changes in the Grape Crush report, for instance, which would adjust the price per ton up or down depending upon activity in the market. Yeah,
he brought that up. What he said is he would do a 7% change in the previous 2 years' district average.
He brought that up?
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. This grower is really an interesting guy. He's smart.
Well, I think the winery's pretty smart too, but geez, are you his cousin or something? But I mean, do you think these price cap type of contracts are a decent idea to do for a winery?
I do, because I think that in a long-term contract, I think it's really smart for the winery to do it, because then your contract is responsive to the market, and you won't be trapped in a situation where your price is fixed high and then the market drops. And you had that situation already. The only reluctance I have a little bit with dealing with the Grape Crush report is that it is a lagging report. But we're not talking about fixing the price to the weighted average price under the Grape Crush report. We're just talking about the differential move from year to year.
Yeah, the change. Basis. Yeah, I understand the change.
So I think that makes some sense, and it makes your contract resilient in the long run, and that's important for you, for sure.
Okay, thanks.